is there an argument that putting someone away, we've got to do something, right? And I'm sure you agree. If someone
No, I
horrible,
don't. I probably don't agree with what you're about to say.
I
don't agree with the alternative either,
which is putting someone in prison for life.
No, of course not.
Okay, because I was going to say, but you might agree with this point, that that's also a hell of a thing to do.
No, it is terrible. It's the death penalty and a slow thing. But I don't agree we should put people in prison. I think that's a terrible idea.
What do we do with like a Charles
Manson? No, let's just start at the beginning. Okay, your wife, I believe, is Argentinian.
Yeah.
And what's her name?
I don't know if
you don't want to say it. All right. Well, let's call her Angela.
Yeah.
I want you to look me in the eye. I'm the prosecutor, and your wife is sitting here. I say she's murdered someone in a nasty way. Look at her over here, right? I want you to say, "Dear wife, I'm sending you to prison for a long time." Are you going to do that?
God. But this is it. People try to get their own loved ones off, don't they?
No, but of course you do. But what you've got to think about is everyone I've ever represented has loved ones. And the question is why we do what we do. And if I were to ask you about the most despicable thing you've ever done in your entire life that you're most ashamed of, my legal advice would be don't say it out loud on your podcast. But we've all done terrible things, and a lot of the things that we've done are far worse than things we send people to prison for. I mean, I'm not going to make you say you've smoked dope, but people go to prison for that. That's just absurd, right? There's a better solution to all of these things. Your Charles Manson example is a good one. The guy was wacko jacko, and he should have been in a mental hospital. And the idea that we say that Charles Manson was a sane person going around doing what he did is just silly. And I've represented an awful lot of people under these circumstances, and the worse the facts, the more obvious the explanation. And I just don't go along with the idea that treating people as badly as they treated other people is a great way to solve problems.
My God, it's an interesting thought, and that's why you're here.
I want to. I'm a heretic on that.
Well, yeah.
And I'm proud to be, because I think there's a very interesting thing we should do in life, which is look around ourselves at all the things that people believe, and then say, is that really sensible? And I don't know about you. I mean, I love it. I'm not being pious or anything. I'm not saying I have a superior access to the voice of God, but I think we're surrounded by madness in all sorts of ways. And we need to rethink that. And with the students I have, I try to get them to rethink, why do we hate people in particular? You want to take the worst example that you've done stuff on, I know, is pedophiles. I mean, we hate them like there's no tomorrow. But no one chooses to be a pedophile. And anyone who thinks that a pedophile's not mentally ill is just crazy. So you have to think to yourself, why is it that we don't see that? Because until we do see it, we're not going to solve the problem. As long as we just try to chase these people underground, we're just going to create a bigger problem.
See, I've got many alternative arguments going through my mind, but I know you've heard them all a million times.
Probably have.
But it's still worth me putting them to you, I suppose.
You're welcome.
Just as you had my imaginary wife there,
right.
I would say similar, telling your wife here that the person who did horrible things to your, I'm going to say hypothetical son. I don't want you to even imagine with your own children. But
no, I've got a son.
But a hypothetical one, because I don't want to even put your son in that imaginary situation.
No, I've thought about this many times.
Okay, and you're going to say to your wife, I'm sorry that this guy that was touching your kid and those kinds of things is not going to go to prison.
My wife would agree with me, but she's a defense lawyer, and she fundamentally agrees with those things. And it's not, look, with all of this, God knows, I've been a victim of attempted murder myself. I've been through all sorts of those things. I don't like that. It's terrible.
Of course.
But if we want to stop it, we're not going to stop it in an adversarial world that we have in a courtroom. That's just the worst way to solve those problems. And, when these guys put me in hospital one time, I don't want them to go to prison for the rest of their life. I don't see what that's going to do. But I do want them to stop doing it. And I had one of my clients go talk to them and tell them what's what, which I hope would help get them not to do this stuff.
There are bad people in the world, right? 1%,
There are people who do bad things.
1% are psychopaths, I think.
Well, of those, if you study psychopaths and with the MMPI in America, it's doctors, lawyers, and mass murderers. So you have to look around yourself a bit. And,
well, providing the doctors and lawyers don't commit crimes, then fine.
Well, I'm not totally convinced of that. In terms of the sort of capitalist world, I think the rich people can do some terrible, terrible things.
And they should be...
They shouldn't be executed for it.
No, they should go to prison for their crimes.
No, they shouldn't. They should. We should not be teaching them this is a cool thing to do.
What do you do with someone who does a Ponzi scheme? Okay, well, let's talk about middle class or middle upper class wealthy people.
Why don't we talk about Liz Truss? She and her chancellor cost every person in Britain £3,000, apparently. That's bigger than any Ponzi scheme that's ever happened.
Well, the economy's worse with Starmer, though.
And it probably is.
But these are not crimes. These are not people who deliberately went out of their way to... They both are looking, Starmer and Truss, to fix the economy. That's their idea.
Yeah, but what they did was idiotic.
And idiotic.
They caused a huge amount of harm.
Yeah, but idiotic might be one thing. I mean, that's an opinion, and I respect that opinion, but it's not the same as mutilating a child.
Well, no, it's probably more in some ways, and it depends what you're dealing with. I've dealt with this obviously many times. In some ways, what some people do in their antisocial way when they're trying to get rich and rich and richer is far more premeditated. And so, I'm not interested in that argument back and forth. I'm not going to send the rich people to prison. I just think we need to have a system where we're trying to teach people to be decent to each other. And the way you do that system, one of the things about my son, I adore my lad, and I want it said on record how proud I am to be his father. But, I've never punished him for anything, ever. I've never taken anything away from him. I've never done any of those things because I think punishment is a very bad way to get people to do things better. I've talked to him and, I'm sure the dear lad will make as many mistakes as I did. Well, perhaps not that many. But, it's just not... We gradually begin to see that with children, we shouldn't beat them. I don't know if you were waterboarded in school. I was.
You were waterboarded at school?
I was. I'll tell you that in a minute.
Well, I can see why you have a strong feeling against punishment. Absolutely.
Well, but the thing about it is we've come a huge way from when I was beaten all the time in school. I was indeed waterboarded, all sorts of other things. Now we don't do that to kids, right? And thank goodness.
Yeah.
And we say when we see someone in a supermarket screaming at kids, we tell them not to do it. And yet we're becoming harsher with people the moment they hit 18. And, I think that's irrational and bizarre.
Well, I think.
Do you want to hear about waterboarding now?
Yeah, go on.
It is quite fun. I went to Radley College, which is one of the evil private schools that we should abolish. I know, don't get me wrong. I was very happy and I was head boy and all that nonsense. But I think they're wrong. So I was put in a bath and they put wooden slats over it, the things you'd have by the bath, fill it up with cold water so you're drowning. And then if you poke your nose between the boards, they took a pin and stuck it in your nose. These people are total sociopaths. And that was weird.
I'm sorry you went through that.
Well, I'm glad.
Seriously, that's awful.
Well, it only came back to me when I was talking to this poor guy in Guantanamo Bay. And he was mentioning waterboarding. I said, "Yeah, well, been there, done that."
It's a funny one because I didn't necessarily know would get into this, but there's a political debate I think we'll have to have in a nice way because you said yourself. I guess what a lot of people on the left maybe think of people on the right. Which is, they may be a little bit unfeeling or
No, and I totally disagree with that. And I think left people who are sanctimonious are just fools. We all do. There's this idea that left-wing people are somehow nicer and kinder and better. It's not true. And indeed, this notion feeds into the foolish concept that human nature is to be selfish and unpleasant. It is. Everything that we do, whether we're lefty or righty, we do because it makes us feel better. And it's true for me as it is for the most right-wing person in the world.
I agree with that.
And so it's actually much easier to get people to become what I'd love. I'm not saying this is going to happen in my lifetime, but for people to become good old socialists. Because you don't have to change human nature. You just have to make people feel good about doing good things for other people instead of making them feel good about getting richer.
So I think
which is a very simplistic.
Of course.
Yeah.
But okay, then if we agree on that, and I do agree with you on that, I'm very much a determinist, and I very much feel that if something feels good and it gives you a sort of serotonin boost or dopamine boost or whatever, and that can be, often it's your political views, which is left or right or whatever. A key difference tends to be then that the left think that maybe human nature is better than what the right think it is. And I agree. Because it has to be for socialism to work.
No, it doesn't. We just have to teach people that, right?
But it's gone wrong every time because of human nature.
No, it's gone wrong because we're not very good at achieving utopia. Actually, if you look at society's evolution, you live in a wonderfully gentle, nice country.
Yeah.
Britain, and people don't understand that. And, I've spent much of my life in America, which is not nearly as kind.